Damane Egwene dismounted as the waygate opened, and when Liandrin motioned them through, she led the shaggy mare carefully out. Even so, she and Bella both stumbled in brush, flattened by the opening waygate, as they suddenly seemed to be moving even more slowly. A screen of dense shrubs had surrounded and hidden the waygate. There were only a few trees close by, and a morning breeze ruffled foliage with a little more colour than the leaves had had in Tar Valon. Watching her friends emerge after her, she had been standing there a good minute before she became aware that others were already there, just out of sight, on the other side of the gates. When she did notice them, she stared uncertainly. They were as odd a group as she had ever seen, and she had heard too many rumours of the war on Toman Head. Armoured men, at least 50 of them, with overlapping steel plates down their chests and dull black helmets shaped like insects' heads, sat their saddles or stood beside their horses, staring at her and the emerging women, staring at the waygate, muttering among themselves. The only bare-headed man among them, a tall, dark-faced, hook-nosed fellow standing with a gilded and painted helmet on his hip, looked astonished at what he was seeing. There were women with the soldiers too. 2 wore plain, dark grey dresses and wide silver collars, and stood staring intently at those coming out of the waygate, each with another woman close behind her, as if ready to speak into her ear. 2 other women, standing a little apart, wore wide, divided skirts that came well short of their ankles, and panels embroidered with forked lightning bolts on their bosoms and skirts. Oddest of all was the last woman, reclining on a palanquin borne by 8 muscular, bare-chested men in baggy black trousers. The sides of her scalp were shaved, so that only a wide crest of black hair remained to fall down her back. A long, cream-coloured robe worked in flowers and birds on blue ovals was carefully arranged to show her skirts of pleated white, and her fingernails were a good inch long, the first 2 on each hand lacquered blue. "Liandrin Sedai," Egwene asked uneasily, "do you know who these people are?" Her friends fingered their reins, as if wondering whether to mount and run, but Liandrin replaced the Avendasora leaf and stepped forward confidently as the waygate began to close. "The High Lady Suroth," Liandrin said, making it halfway between a question and statement. The women on the palanquin nodded fractionally. "You are Liandrin." Her speech was slurred, and it took Egwene a moment to understand. "Ace Sedai," Suroth added with a twist to her lips, and a murmur rose among the soldiers. "We must be done here quickly, Liandrin. There are patrols, and it would not do to be found. You would enjoy the attentions of the seekers for truth no more than I. I mean to be back in Falme before Turak knows I am gone." "What are you talking about?" Nynaeve demanded. "What is she talking about, Liandrin?" Liandrin laid a hand on Nynaeve's shoulder and one on Egwene's. "These are the 2 of whom you were told, and there is another." She nodded toward Elayne. "She is the daughter-heir of Andor." The 2 women with the lightning on their dresses were approaching the party in front of the waygate. They carried coils of some silvery metal in their hands, Egwene noticed, and the bare-headed soldier came with them. He did not put a hand near the sword hilt sticking up above his shoulder, and he wore a casual smile, but Egwene still watched him narrowly. Liandrin gave no sign of agitation, otherwise Egwene would have jumped onto Bela right then. "Liandrin Sedai," she said urgently, "who are these people? Are they here to help Rand and the others too?" The hook-nosed man suddenly seized Min and Elayne by the scruffs of their necks, and in the next instant everything seemed to happen at once. The man yelled a curse, and a woman screamed, or perhaps more than one woman, Egwene could not be sure. Abruptly the breeze was a gale that whipped away Liandrin's angry shout in clouds of dirt and leaves, and made the trees bend and groan. Horses reared and whinnied shrilly, and one of the women reached out and fastened something around Egwene's neck. Cloak flapping like a sail, Egwene braced against the wind and tugged at what felt like a collar of smooth metal. It would not budge. Under her frantic fingers it felt all of one piece, though she knew it had to have some kind of clasp. The silvery coils the woman had carried now trailed over Egwene's shoulder, their other end joining a bright bracelet on the woman's left wrist. Balling her fist tightly, Egwene hit the woman as hard as she could, right in her eye, and staggered and fell to her knees herself, head ringing. It felt as if a large man had struck her in the face. When she could see straight once more, the wind had died. A number of horses wandered loose, Bella and Elayne's mare among them, and some of the soldiers were cursing and picking themselves up off the ground. Liandrin was calmly brushing dust and leaves from her dress. Min knelt, supporting herself with her hands, groggily trying to rise further. The hook-nosed man stood over her, his hand dripping blood. Min's knife lay just out of her reach, the blade stained red along one side. Nynaeve and Elayne were nowhere to be seen, and Nynaeve's mare was gone too. So were some of the soldiers, and one of the pairs of women. The other two were still there, and Egwene could see now that they were linked by a silver cord, just like the one that still joined her to the woman standing over her. That woman was rubbing her cheek as she squatted beside Egwene. There was a bruise already coming up around her left eye. With long, dark hair and big brown eyes, she was pretty, and perhaps as much as 10 years older than Nynaeve. "Your first lesson," she said emphatically. There was no animosity in her voice, but what almost sounded like friendliness. "I will not punish you further this time, since I should have been on guard with a newly caught damane. Know this. You are a damane, a leashed one, and I am a sul'dam, a holder of the leash. When damane and sul'dam are joined, whatever hurt the sul'dam feels, the damane feels twice over, even to death. So you must remember that you may never strike at a sul'dam in any way, and you must protect your sul'dam even more than yourself. I am Renna. How are you called?" "I am not." Tobinda. "What you said," Egwene muttered. She pulled at the collar again. It gave no more than before. She thought of knocking the woman down and trying to pry the bracelet from her wrist, but rejected it, even if the soldiers did not try to stop her, and so far they seemed to be ignoring her and Renna altogether. She had the sinking feeling the woman was telling the truth. Touching her left eye brought a wince. It did not feel puffy, so perhaps she was not actually growing a bruise to match Renna's, but it still hurt. Her left eye, and Renna's left eye. She raised her voice. "Liandrin," said I. "Why are you letting them do this?" Liandrin dusted her hands together, never looking in her direction. "The very first thing you must learn," Renna said, "is to do exactly as you are told, and without delay." Egwene gasped. Suddenly her skin burned and prickled as if she had rolled in stinging nettles from the soles of her feet to her scalp. She tossed her head as the burning sensation increased. "Many sul'dam," Renna went on in that almost friendly tone, "do not believe damane should be allowed names, or at least only names they are given. But I am the one who took you, so I will be in charge of your training, and I will allow you to keep your own name, if you do not displease me too far. I am mildly upset with you now. Do you really wish to keep on until I am angry?" Quivering, Egwene gritted her teeth. Her nails dug into her palms with the effort of not scratching wildly. "Idiot. It's only your name." "Egwene," she managed to get out. "I am Egwene Olvir." Instantly the burning itch was gone. She let out a long, unsteady breath. "Egwene," Renna said. "That is a good name." And to Egwene's horror, Renna patted her on the head as she would a dog. That, she realized, was what she had detected in the woman's voice. A certain goodwill for a dog in training, not quite the friendliness one might have toward another human being. Renna chuckled. "Now you are even angrier. If you intend to strike at me again, remember to make it a small blow, for you will feel it twice as hard as I. Do not attempt to channel, that you will never do without my express command." Egwene's eye throbbed. She pushed herself to her feet and tried to ignore Renna, as much as it was possible to ignore someone who held a leash fastened to a collar around your neck. Her cheeks burned when the other woman chuckled again. She wanted to go to Min, but the amount of leash Renna had let out would not reach that far. She called softly, "Min, are you all right?" Sitting slowly back on her heels, Min nodded, then put a hand to her head as if she wished she had not moved it. Jagged lightning crackled across the clear sky, then struck among the trees some distance off. Egwene jumped and suddenly smiled. Nynaeve was still free, and Elayne. If anyone could free her and Min, Nynaeve could. Her smile faded into a glare for Liandrin. For whatever the reason the Aes Sedai had betrayed them, there would be a reckoning. Someday, somehow, the glare did no good. Liandrin did not look away from the palanquin. The bare-chested men knelt, lowering the palanquin to the ground, and Suroth stepped down, carefully arranging her robe, then picked her way to Liandrin on soft, slippered feet. The two women were much of a size. Brown eyes stared levelly into black. "You were to bring me too," Suroth said. Instead, I have only one, while two run loose, one of them more powerful by far than I had been led to believe. She will attract every patrol of ours within 2 leagues. I brought you 3, Liandrin said calmly. If you cannot manage to hold them, perhaps our master should find another among you to serve him. You take fright at trifles. If patrols come, kill them. Lightning flashed again in the near distance, and moments later something roared like thunder not far from where it struck. A cloud of dust rose into the air. Neither Liandrin nor Suroth took any notice. I could still return to Falme with 2 new damane, Suroth said. It grieves me to allow an to Aes Sedai. She twisted the words like a curse to walk free. Liandrin's face did not change, but Egwene saw a nimbus abruptly glow around her. Beware, High Lady, Renna called. She stands ready. There was a stir among the soldiers, a reaching for swords and lances, but Suroth only steepled her hands, smiling at Liandrin over her long nails. You will make no move against me, Liandrin. Our master would disapprove, as I am surely needed here more than you, and you fear him more than you fear being made damane. Liandrin smiled, though white spots marked her cheeks with anger. And you, Suroth, fear him more than you fear me, burning you to a cinder where you stand. Just so. We both fear him. Yet even our master's needs will change with time. All Aryth damane will be leashed eventually. Perhaps I will be the one who places the collar around your lovely throat. As you say, Suroth, our master's needs will change. I will remind you of it on the day when you kneel to me. A tall leather leaf, perhaps a mile away, suddenly became a roaring torch. This grows tiresome, Suroth said. Elbar, recall them. The hook-nosed man produced a horn no bigger than his fist. It made a hoarse, piercing cry. You must find the woman Nynaeve, Liandrin said sharply. Elayne is of no importance, but both the woman and this girl here must be taken with you on your ships when you sail. I know very well what has been commanded, Aryth damane, though I would give much to know why. However much you were told, child, Liandrin sneered, that is how much you are allowed to know. Remember that you serve and obey. These 2 must be removed to the other side of the Aryth Ocean and kept there. Suroth sniffed. I will not remain here to find this Nynaeve. My usefulness to our master will be at an end if Turak hands me over to the seekers for truth. Liandrin opened her mouth angrily, but Suroth refused to allow her a word. The woman will not remain free for long. Neither of them will. When we sail again, we will take with us every woman on this miserable spit of land who can channel even slightly, leashed and collared. If you wish to remain and search for her, do so. Patrols will be here soon, thinking to engage the rabble that still hides in the countryside. Some patrols take damane with them, and they will not care what master you serve. Should you survive the encounter, the leash and collar will teach you a new life, and I do not believe our master will trouble to deliver one foolish enough to let herself be taken. If either is allowed to remain here, Liandrin said tightly, our master will trouble himself with you, Suroth. Take them both, or pay the price. She strode to the waygate, clutching the reins of her mare. Soon it was closing behind her. The soldiers who had gone after Nynaeve and Elayne came galloping back with the 2 women linked by leash, collar and bracelet, the damane and the sul'dam riding side by side. 3 men led horses with bodies across the saddles. Egwene felt a surge of hope when she realized the bodies all wore armor. They had not caught Nynaeve or Elayne, either one. Min started to rise to her feet, but the hook-nosed man planted a boot between her shoulder blades and drove her to the ground. Gasping for breath, she twitched there weakly. I beg permission to speak, High Lady, he said. Suroth made a small motion with her hand, and he went on. This peasant cut me, High Lady. If the High Lady has no use for her, to Winda. Suroth motioned slightly again, already turning away, and he reached over his shoulder for the hilt of his sword. No, Egwene shouted. She heard Renna curse softly, and suddenly the burning itch covered her skin again, worse than before, but she did not stop. Please, High Lady, please. She is my friend. Pain, such as she had never known, racked her through the burning. Every muscle knotted and cramped. She pitched on her face in the dirt, mewling, but she could still see Elba's heavy, curved blade come free of its sheath, see him raise it with both hands. Please. Oh, Min. Abruptly the pain was gone, as if it had never been, only the memory remained. Suroth's blue velvet slippers, dirt-stained now, appeared in front of her face, but it was at Elbar that she stared. He stood there with his sword over his head, and all his weight on the foot on Min's back. Tobinda, and he did not move. "This peasant is your friend," Suroth said. Egwene started to rise, but at a surprised arching of Suroth's eyebrow, she remained lying where she was, and only raised her head. She had to save Min, if it means grovelling. Tobinda. She parted her lips, and hoped her gritted teeth would pass for a smile. "Yes, High Lady. And if I spare her, if I allow her to visit you occasionally, you will work hard and learn as you are taught?" "I will, High Lady." She would have promised much more to keep that sword from splitting Min's skull. "I'll even keep it," she thought sourly, "as long as I have to." "Put the girl on her horse, Elbar," Suroth said. "Tie her on, if she cannot sit her saddle. If this damane proves a disappointment, perhaps then I will let you have the head of the girl." She was already moving toward her palanquin. Renna pulled Egwene roughly to her feet and pushed her toward Bella, but Egwene had eyes only for Min. Elbar was no gentler with Min than Renna with her, but she thought Min was all right. At least Min shrugged off Elbar's attempt to tie her across her saddle and climbed onto her gelding with only a little help. The odd party started off, westward, with Suroth leading and Elbar slightly to the rear of her palanquin, but close enough to heed any summons immediately. Renna and Egwene rode at the back with Min, and the other sul'dam and damane behind the soldiers. The woman who had apparently meant to collar Nynaeve fondled the coiled silver leash she still carried and looked angry. Sparse forest covered the rolling land, and the smoke of the burning leather leaf was soon only a smudge in the sky behind them. "You were honored," Renna said after a time, "having the High Lady speak to you. Another time I would let you wear a ribbon to mark the honor. But since you brought her attention on yourself..." Tobinda. Egwene cried out as a switch seemed to lash across her back, then another across her leg, her arm. From every direction they seemed to come. She knew there was nothing to block, but she could not help throwing her arms about as if to stop the blows. She bit her lip to stifle her moans, but tears still rolled down her cheeks. Bella whinnied and danced, but Renna's grip on the silver leash kept her from carrying Egwene away. None of the soldiers even looked back. "What are you doing to her?" Min shouted. "Egwene, stop it. You live on sufferance." Tobinda. "Min, is it?" Renna said mildly. "Let this be a lesson for you as well. So long as you try to interfere, it will not stop." Min raised a fist, then let it fall. "I won't interfere. Only, please, stop it. Egwene, I'm sorry." The unseen blows went on for a few moments more, as if to show Min her intervention had done nothing, then ceased, but Egwene could not stop shuddering. The pain did not go away this time. She pushed back the sleeve of her dress, thinking to see wheals. Her skin was unmarked, but the feel of them was still there. She swallowed. "It was not your fault, Min." Bella tossed her head, eyes rolling, and Egwene patted the mare's shaggy neck. "It wasn't yours either." "It was your fault, Egwene," Renna said. She sounded so patient, dealing so kindly with someone who was too dense to see the right, that Egwene wanted to scream. When a damane is punished, it is always her fault, even if she does not know why. A damane must anticipate what her sul'dam wants. But this time you do know why. Damane are like furniture or tools, always there ready to be used, but never pushing themselves forward for attention, especially not for the attention of one of the blood. Egwene bit her lip until she tasted blood. "This is a nightmare. It can't be real. Why did Liandrin do this? Why is this happening? May thin? Tobinda. May I ask a question?" "Of me you may," Renna smiled. "Many sul'dam will wear your bracelet over the years. There are always many more sul'dam than damane, and some would have your hide in strips if you took your eyes off the floor or opened your mouth without permission, but I see no reason not to let you speak, so long as you are careful in what you say." One of the other sul'dam snorted loudly. She was linked to a pretty dark-haired woman in her middle years who kept her eyes on her hands. Liandrin. Egwene would not give her the honorific, not ever again, and the High Lady spoke of a master they both serve. The thought came into her head of a man with almost healed burns marring his face and eyes and mouth that sometimes turned to fire. But even if he was only a figure in her dreams that seemed too horrible to contemplate, who is he? What does he want with me and Min? She knew it was silly to avoid naming Nynaeve. She did not think any of these people would forget her just because her name was not mentioned, especially the blue-eyed sul'dam stroking her empty leash. But it was the only way she could think of fighting back at the moment. "The affairs of the blood," Renna said, "are not for me to take notice of, and certainly not for you. The High Lady will tell me what she wishes me to know, and I will tell you what I wish you to know. Anything else that you hear or see must be to you as if it never was said, as if it never happened. This way lies safety, most especially for a damane. Damane are too valuable to be killed out of hand, but you might find yourself not only soundly punished, but absent a tongue to speak or hands to write. Damane can do what they must without these things." Egwene shivered, though the air was not very cold. Pulling her cloak up onto her shoulders, her hand brushed the leash, and she jerked at it fitfully. "This is a horrible thing. How can you do this to anyone? What diseased mind ever thought of it?" The blue-eyed sul'dam with the empty leash growled. "This one could do without her tongue already, Renna." Renna only smiled patiently. "How is it horrible? Could we allow anyone to run loose who can do what a damane can? Sometimes men are born who would be marath damane if they were women. It is so here also, I have heard, and they must be killed, of course, but the women do not go mad. Better for them to become damane than make trouble contending for power." As for the mind that first thought of the sul'dam, it was the mind of a woman who called herself Aes Sedai. Egwene knew incredulity must be painting her face because Renna laughed openly. When Luther Pandrag Mondwyn, son of the Hawkwing, first faced the armies of the night, he found many among them who called themselves Aes Sedai. They contended for power among themselves and used the one power on the field of battle. One such, a woman named Dane, who thought she could do better serving the Emperor. He was not Emperor then, of course, since he had no Aes Sedai in his armies, came to him with a device she had made, the first sul'dam, fastened to the neck of one of her sisters. Though that woman did not want to serve Luther, the sul'dam required her to serve. Dane made more sul'dam, the first sul'dam were found, and women captured who called themselves Aes Sedai discovered that they were in fact only marath damane, those who must be leashed. It is said that when she herself was leashed, Dane's screams shook the towers of midnight, but of course she too was a marath damane, and marath damane cannot be allowed to run free. Perhaps you'll be one of those who has the ability to make a sul'dam. If so, you will be pampered, you may rest assured." Egwene looked yearningly at the countryside through which they rode. The land was beginning to rise in low hills, and the thin forest had dwindled to scattered thickets, but she was sure she could lose herself in them. "Am I supposed to look forward to being pampered like a pet dog?" she said bitterly. "A lifetime of being chained to men and women who think I am some kind of animal? Not men." Renna chuckled. "All sul'dam are women. If a man put on this bracelet, most of the time it would be no different than if it were hanging on a peg on the wall." "And sometimes," the blue-eyed sul'dam put in harshly, "you and he would both die screaming." The woman had sharp features and a tight, thin-lipped mouth, and Egwene realized that anger was apparently her permanent expression. From time to time, the Empress plays with lords by linking them to a damane. It makes the lord sweat and entertains the court of the 9 moons. The lord never knows until it is done whether he will live or die, and neither does the damane. Her laugh was vicious. "Only the Empress can afford to waste damane in such a way, Orwyn," Renna snapped, "and I do not mean to train this damane only to have her thrown away. I have not seen any training at all so far, Renna. Only a great deal of chatter, as if you and this damane were girlhood friends." "Perhaps it is time to see what she can do," Renna said, studying Egwene. "Do you have enough control yet to channel at that distance?" She pointed to a tall oak standing alone on a hilltop. Egwene frowned at the tree, perhaps half a mile from the line followed by the soldiers and Suroth's palanquin. She had never tried anything much beyond arm's reach, but she thought it might be possible. "I don't know," she said. "Try," Renna told her. "Feel the tree. Feel the sap in the tree. I want you to make it all, not only hot, but so hot that every drop of sap in every branch flashes to steam in an instant. Do it." Egwene was shocked to discover an urge to do as Renna commanded. She had not channeled or even touched sul'dam in 2 days. The desire to fill herself with the one power made her shiver. In half a heartbeat she discarded, will not. The wheels that were not there still burned too sharply for her to be quite that foolish. Cannot, she finished instead. It is too far, and I've never done anything like that before. One of the sul'dam laughed raucously, and Orwyn said, she never even tried. Renna shook her head almost sadly. When one has been a sul'dam long enough, she told Egwene, one learns to tell many things about damane even without the bracelet, but with the bracelet one can always tell whether a damane has tried to channel. You must never lie to me or to any sul'dam, not even by a hair. Suddenly, the invisible switches were back, striking at her everywhere. Yelling, she tried to hit Renna, but the sul'dam casually knocked her fist away, and Egwene felt as if Renna had hit her arm with a stick. She dug her heels into Bella's flanks, but the sul'dam's grip on the leash nearly pulled her out of her saddle. Frantically, she reached for sul'dam, meaning to hurt Renna enough to make her stop, just the kind of hurt she herself had been given. The sul'dam shook her head wryly. Egwene howled as her own skin was suddenly scalded. Not until she fled from sul'dam completely did the burn begin to fade, and the unseen blows never ceased or slowed. She tried to shout that she would try, if only Renna would stop, but all she could manage was to scream and writhe. Dimly, she was aware of Min shouting angrily and trying to ride to her side, of Orwyn tearing Min's reins from her hands, of another sul'dam speaking sharply to her damane, who looked at Min. And then Min was yelling too, arms flapping as if trying to ward off blows or beat away stinging insects. In her own pain, Min seemed distant. Their cries together were enough to make some of the soldiers twist in their saddles. After one look they laughed and turned back. How sul'dam dealt with damane was no affair of theirs. To Egwene it seemed to go on forever, but at last there was an end. She lay sprawled weakly across the cantle of her saddle, cheeks wet with tears, sobbing into Bella's mane. The mare whickered uneasily. "It is good that you have spirit," Renna said calmly. "The best damane are those who have spirit to be shaped and moulded." Egwene squeezed her eyes shut. She wished she could close her ears too to shut out Renna's voice. "I have to get away. I have to, but how? Nynaeve, help me. Help me. Light, somebody help me." "You will be one of the best," Renna said in tones of satisfaction. Her hand stroked Egwene's hair, a mistress soothing her dog. Nynaeve leaned out of her saddle to peer around the screen of prickly-leafed shrubs. Scattered trees met her eyes, some with leaves turning color. The expanses of grass and brush between seemed empty. Nothing moved that she could see except the thinning column of smoke, wavering in a breeze from the leatherleaf. That had been her work, the leatherleaf, and once the lightning called from a clear sky, and a few other things she had not thought to try until those two women tried them on her. She thought they must work together in some way, though she could not understand their relation to each other, apparently leashed as they were. One wore a collar, but the other was chained as surely as she. What Nynaeve was sure of was that one or both were Aes Sedai. She had never had a clear enough sight of them to see the glow of channeling, but it had to be. "I'll certainly take pleasure in telling Sheriam about them," she thought dryly. "Aes Sedai don't use the power as a weapon, do they?" She certainly had. She had at least knocked the two women down with that lightning strike, and she had seen one of the soldiers, or his body rather, burn from the ball of fire she made and hurled at them. But she had not seen any of the strangers at all in some time now. Sweat beaded on her forehead, and it was not all from exertion. Her contact with sul'dam was gone, and she could not bring it back. In that first fury of knowing that Liandrin had betrayed them, sul'dam had been there almost before she knew it, the one power flooding her. It had seemed she could do anything, and as long as they had chased her, rage at being hunted like an animal had fueled her. Now the chase had vanished. The longer she had gone without seeing an enemy at whom she could strike, the more she had begun to worry that they might be sneaking up on her somehow, and the more she had had time to worry about what was happening to Egwene and Elayne and Min. Now she was forced to admit that what she felt most was fear. Fear for them, fear for herself. It was anger she needed. Something stirred behind a tree. Her breath caught, and she fumbled for sul'dam, but all the exercises Sheriam and the others had taught her, all the blossoms unfolding in her mind, all the imagined streams that she held like riverbanks did no good. She could feel it, sense the source, but she could not touch it. Elayne stepped from behind the tree in a wary crouch, and Nynaeve sagged with relief. The daughter heir's dress was dirty and torn, her golden hair was a tangle of snarls and leaves, and her searching eyes were as wide as those of a frightened fawn, but she held her short-bladed dagger in a steady hand. Nynaeve picked up her reins and rode into the open. Elayne gave a convulsive jump, then her hand went to her throat, and she drew a deep breath. Nynaeve dismounted, and the two women hugged, taking comfort in having found each other. "For a moment," Elayne said as they finally stepped apart, "I thought you were. Tobinda, Tobinda, Tobinda. Do you know where they are? There were two men following me. Another few minutes and they would have caught me, but a horn sounded and they turned their horses and galloped off. They could see me, Nynaeve, and they just left. I heard it too, and I haven't seen any of them since. Have you seen Egwene or Min?" Elayne shook her head, slumping to sit on the ground. "Not since. Not since. Tobinda, Tobinda, Tobinda. That man hit Min, knocked her down, and one of those women was trying to put something around Egwene's neck. I saw that much before I ran. I don't think they got away, Nynaeve. I should have done something. Min cut the hand that was holding me, and Egwene. Tobinda, Tobinda, Tobinda. I just ran, Nynaeve. I realized I was free, and I ran. Mother had better marry Gareth Brine and have another daughter as soon as she can. I'm not fit to take the throne. Don't be a goose, Nynaeve said sharply. Remember, I have a packet of sheepstong root among my herbs. Elayne had her head in her hands. The jibe did not even produce a murmur. Listen to me, girl. Did you see me stay to fight 20 or 30 armed men, not to mention the Aes Sedai? If you had waited, the most likely thing by far is that you would be a prisoner too. If they didn't just kill you, they seemed to be interested in Egwene and me for some reason. They might not have cared whether you remained alive or not. Why are they interested in Egwene and me? Why us in particular? Why did Liandrin do this? Why? She had no more answers now than she had had the first time she asked herself these questions. "If I had died trying to help them," Elayne began, "you'd be dead. And little good you'd be then to yourself or them. Now get on your feet and brush off your dress." Nynaeve rummaged in her saddlebags for a hairbrush. "And fix your hair." Elayne got up slowly and took the brush with a small laugh. "You sound like Linny, my old nurse." She began to run the brush through her hair, wincing as tangles pulled. "But how are we going to help them, Nynaeve? You may be as strong as a full sister when you are angry, but they have women who can channel too. I cannot think they're Aes Sedai, but they might as well be. We do not even know in which direction they took them." "West," Nynaeve said. "That creature Suroth mentioned Falme, and that's as far west on Toman Head as you can go. We will go to Falme. I hope Liandrin is there. I will make her curse the day her mother laid eyes on her father. But first I think we had better find some clothes of the country. I've seen Tarabona and damane women in the tower, and what they wear is nothing like what we have on. We would stand out in Falme as strangers. I would not mind a damane dress, though Mother would surely have a fit if she ever found out I'd worn one, and Lini would never let me hear the end of it. But even if we find a village, can we afford new dresses? I have no idea how much money you have, but I have only 10 gold marks and perhaps twice that in silver. That will keep us 2 or 3 weeks, but I don't know what we will do after that." "A few months as a novice in Tar Valon," Nynaeve said, laughing, "has not stopped you thinking like the heir to a throne. I don't have a tenth what you do, but altogether it will keep us 2 or 3 months in comfort. Longer, if we are careful. I have no intention of buying us dresses, and they won't be new in any case. My grey silk dress will do us some good, with all those pearls and that gold thread. If I can't find a woman who will trade us each 2 or 3 sturdy changes for that, I will give you this ring, and I will be the novice." She swung up into her saddle and reached a hand down to pull Elayne up behind her. "What are we going to do when we reach Falme?" Elayne asked as she settled on the mare's rump. "I won't know that until we are there." Nynaeve paused, letting the horse stand. "Are you sure you want to do this? It will be dangerous, more dangerous than it is for Egwene and Min. They would come after us if our circumstances were reversed, I know they would. Are we going to stay here all day?" Elayne dug her heels in, and the mare started off. Nynaeve turned the horse until the sun, still short of its noonday crest, shone at their backs. "We are going to have to be cautious. The The Aes Sedai, we know, can recognize a woman who can channel just by being within arm's length of her. These Aes Sedai may be able to pick us out of a crowd if they are looking for us, and we had better assume they are. They were certainly looking for Egwene and me. But why? Yes, cautious. You were right before, too. We will not do them any good, letting ourselves be caught as well. Elayne was silent for a moment. Do you think it was all lies, Nynaeve? What Liandrin told us about Rand being in danger, and the others? Aes Sedai do not lie. It was Nynaeve's turn to be silent, remembering Sheriam telling her of the oaths a woman took on being raised to full sisterhood, oaths spoken holding a terre angrial that bound her to keep them, to speak no word that is not true. That was one, but everyone knew that the truth an Aes Sedai said might not be the truth you thought you heard. I expect Rand is warming his feet in front of Lord Agelmar's fire in Faldara this minute, she said. I can't worry about him now. I have to think about Egwene and Min. I suppose he is, Elayne said with a sigh. She shifted behind the saddle. If it is very far to Falme, Nynaeve, I expect to ride in the saddle half the time. This is not a very comfortable seat. We will never reach for me at all if you let this horse set her own pace the whole way. Nynaeve booted the mare to a quick trot, and Elayne yelped and caught at her cloak. Nynaeve told herself that she would take a turn riding behind and not complain if Elayne put the horse to a gallop, but for the most part she ignored the gasps of the woman bouncing behind her. She was too busy hoping that by the time they reached Falme, she could stop being afraid and start being angry. The breeze freshened, cool and brisk, with a hint of cold yet to come. Disagreements. Thunder rumbled across the slate, dark afternoon sky. Rand pulled the hood of his cloak further up, hoping to keep at least some of the cold rain off. Red stepped through muddy puddles doggedly. The hood hung sodden around Rand's head, as the rest of the cloak did around his shoulders, and his fine black coat was just as wet and as cold. The temperature would not have far to drop before snow or sleet came down instead of rain. Snow would fall soon, again. The people in the village they had passed through said 2 snows had already come this year. Shivering, Rand almost wished it was snowing. Then at least he would not be soaked to the skin. The column plodded along, keeping a wary eye on the rolling country. Ingtar's grey owl hung heavily even when the wind gusted. Hurin sometimes pulled his cowl back to sniff the air. He said neither rain nor cold had any effect on a trail, certainly not on the kind of trail he was seeking, but so far the sniffer had found nothing. Behind him, Rand heard Uno mutter a curse. Loyal kept checking his saddlebags. He did not seem to mind getting wet himself, but he worried continually about his books. Everyone was miserable except for Verin, who appeared too lost in thought to even notice that her hood had slid back, exposing her face to the rain. "Can't you do something about this?" Rand demanded of her. A small voice in the back of his head told him he could do it himself. All he need do was embrace saidin. So sweet the call of saidin, to be filled with the one power, to be one with the storm, turn the skies to sunlight, or ride the storm as it raged, whip it to fury and scour Toman Head clean from the sea to the plain. Embrace saidin. He suppressed the longing ruthlessly. The Aes Sedai gave a start. What? Cease? Oh, I suppose. A little. I couldn't stop a storm this big, not by myself, it covers too much area, but I could lessen it some. Where we are, at least. She wiped rain from her face, seemed to realize for the first time that her hood had slipped, and pulled it back up absently. Then why don't you? Matt said. The shivering face peering out from under his hood looked at death's door, but his voice was vigorous. Because if I used that much of the one power, any Aes Sedai closer than 10 miles would know someone had channeled. We don't want to bring these Seanchan down on us with some of their damane. Her mouth tightened angrily. They had learned a little of the invaders in that village called Atuan's Mill, though most of what they had heard hatched more questions than it answered. The people had babbled one moment and clamped their mouths shut the next, trembling and looking over their shoulders. They all shook with fear that the Seanchan would return with their monsters and their damane, that women who should have been Aes Sedai were instead leashed like animals, frightened the villagers even more than the strange creatures the Seanchan commanded, things the folk of Atuan's Mill could only describe in whispers as coming from nightmares. And worst of all, the examples the Seanchan had made before leaving still chilled the people to their marrow. They had buried their dead, but they feared to clean away the large charred patch in the village square. None of them would say what had happened there, but Hurin had vomited as soon as they entered the village, and he would not go near the blackened ground. Atuen's mill had been half deserted. Some had fled to Falme, thinking the Seanchan would not be so harsh in a town they held fast, and others had gone east. More had said they were thinking of it. There was fighting on Ormouth Plain, Taraboners battling damane, it was said, but such houses and barns as were burned, they were kindled by torches in the hands of men. Even a war was easier to face than what the Seanchan had done, what they might do. Why did Fane bring the horn here? Perrin muttered. The question had been asked by each of them at one time or another, and no one had an answer. There's war, and these Seanchan and their monsters. Why here? Ingtar turned in his saddle to look back at them. His face appeared almost as haggard as Mat's. There are always men who see chances for their own advantage in the confusion of war. Fane is one like that. No doubt he thinks to steal the horn again, from the Dark One this time, and use it for his own profit. The Father of Lies never lays simple plans, Vereen said. It may be that he wants Fane to bring the horn here for some reason known only in Sheol Ghul. Monsters, Mat snorted. His cheeks were sunken now, his eyes hollow. That he sounded healthy only made it worse. They saw some Trollocs, or a Fade if you ask me. Well, why not? If the Seanchan have Aes Sedai fighting for them, why not Fades and Trollocs? He caught Vereen staring at him and flinched. Well, they are, on leashes or not. They can channel, and that makes them Aes Sedai. He glanced at Rand and gave a ragged laugh. That makes you Aes Sedai, the light, help us all. Masema came galloping from ahead, through the mud and the steady rain. There is another village ahead, my lord, he said as he pulled in beside Ingtar. His eyes only swept past Rand, but they tightened, and he did not look at Rand again. It's empty, my lord. No villagers, no Seanchan, nobody at all. The houses all look sound, though, except for 2 or 3 that... Tubinda. Well, they aren't there anymore, my lord. Ingtar raised his hand and signalled for a trot. The village Masema had found covered the slopes of a hill, with a paved square at the top around a circle of stone walls. The houses were of stone, all flat-roofed and few more than a single story. 3 that had been larger, along one side of the square, were only heaps of blackened rubble. Shattered chunks of stone and roof beams lay scattered across the square. A few shutters banged when the wind gusted. Ingtar dismounted in front of the only large building still standing. The creaking sign above its door bore a woman juggling stars, but no name. Rain came off the corners in 2 steady drizzles. Vereen hurried inside while Ingtar spoke. Uno, search every house. If there is anyone left, perhaps they can tell us what happened here, and maybe a little more about these Seanchan. And if there's any food, bring that too, and blankets. Uno nodded and began telling off men. Ingtar turned to Hurin. What do you smell? Did Fane come through here? Hurin, rubbing his nose, shook his head. Not him, my lord, and not the Trollocs neither. Whoever did that left a stench, though. He pointed to the wreckage that had been houses. It was killing, my lord. There were people in there. Seanchan, Ingtar growled. Let's get inside. Regan, find some sort of stable for the horses. Vereen already had fires going in both of the big fireplaces, at either end of the common room, and was warming her hands at one, her sodden cloak spread out on one of the tables dotting the tiled floor. She had found a few candles, too, now burning on a table stuck in their own tallow. Emptiness and quiet, except for the occasional grumble of thunder, added to the flickering shadows to give the place a cavernous feel. Rand tossed his equally wet cloak and coat on a table and joined her. Only Loyal seemed more interested in checking his books than in warming himself. We will never find the Horn of Valera this way, Ingtar said. 3 days since we... Tubinda. Since we arrived here. He shuddered and scrubbed a hand through his hair. Rand wondered what the Shianaran had seen in his other lives. Another 2, at least, to Falme, and we have not found so much as a hair of Fane or Darkfriends. There are scores of villages along the coast. He could have gone to any of them and taken ship anywhere by now, if he was ever here. He is here, Verrin said calmly, and he went to Falme. And he's still here, Ram said, waiting for me. Please, Light, he's still waiting. Hurin still hasn't caught a whiff of him, Ingtar said. The sniffer shrugged, as if he felt himself at fault for the failure. Why would he choose Falme? If those villagers are to be believed, Falme is held by these Seanchan. I would give my best hound to know who they are and where they came from. Who they are is not important to us." Verin knelt and unfastened her saddlebags, pulling out dry clothes. "At least we have rooms in which to change our clothes, though it will do us little good unless the weather changes. Ingtar, it may well be that what the villagers told us is right, that they are the descendants of Arthur Hawkwing's armies come back. What matters is that Padan Fain has gone to Falme. The writings in the dungeon at Faldara never mentioned Fain. Forgive me, Aes Sedai, but that could have been a trick as easily as dark prophecy. I can't believe even Trollocs would be stupid enough to tell us everything they were going to do before they did it." She twisted to look up at him. "And what do you mean to do if you will not take my advice?" "I mean to have the Horn of Valere," Ingtar said firmly. "Forgive me, but I have to trust my own senses before some words scrawled by a Trolloc. Tobinda. A Murdrel, surely," Verin murmured, but he did not even pause. "To win this, our rare, airy, Tobinda, or a dark friend, seeming to betray himself out of his own mouth. I mean to quarter the ground until Hurin smells a trail, or we find Fain in the flesh. I must have the horn, Verin Sedai. I must." "That isn't the way," Hurin said softly. "Not must. What happens, happens. No one paid him any mind." "We all must," Verin murmured, peering into her saddlebags. "Yet some things may be even more important than that." She did not say more, but Rand grimaced. He longed to get away from her, and her prods and hints. "I am not the Dragon Reborn. Light, but I wish I could just get away from Aes Sedai completely. Ingtar, I think I'm riding on to Falme. Fain is there. I'm sure he is, and if I don't come soon, he will do something to hurt Emond's Field." He had not mentioned that part before. They all stared at him, Mat and Perrin frowning, worried but considering, Verin as if she had just seen a new piece added to a puzzle. Loyal looked astonished and Hurin seemed confused. Ingtar was openly disbelieving. "Why would he do that?" the Shi'Naran said. "I don't know," Rand lied, "but that was part of the message he left with Barthanes." "And did Barthanes say Fain was going to fall me?" Ingtar demanded. "No. It wouldn't matter if he had." He gave a bitter laugh. "Dark friends lie as naturally as they breathe." "Rand," Mat said, "if I knew how to stop Fain from hurting Emond's Field, I would, if I was sure he was going to. But I need that dagger, Rand, and Hurin has the best chance of finding it." "I will go wherever you go, Rand," Loyal said. He had finished making sure the books were dry and was taking off his sodden coat. "But I don't see where a few more days will change anything, one way or another now. Try being a little less hasty for once." "It doesn't matter to me whether we go to Falme now, later, or never," Perrin said with a shrug. "But if Fain really is threatening Emond's Field..." Tobinda. Well, Mat's right. Hurin is the best way to find him." "I can find him, Lord Rand," Hurin put in. "Let me get one sniff of him, and I'll take you right to him. There's never anything else left a trail like his." "You must make your own choice, Rand," Verin said carefully. "But remember that Falme is held by invaders about whom we still know next to nothing. If you go to Falme alone, you may find yourself a prisoner, or worse, and that will serve nothing. I am sure whatever choice you make will be the right one." "Tavaren," Loyal rumbled. Rand threw up his hands. Uno came in from the square, shaking rain off his cloak. "Not a flaming soul to be found, my lord. Looks to me like they ran like striped pigs. Livestock's all gone, and there isn't a bloody cart or wagon left either. Half the houses are stripped to the flaming floors. I'll wager my next month's pay you could follow them by the bloody furniture they tossed on the side of the road when they realized it was only weighing down their flaming wagons." "What about clothes?" Ingtar asked. Uno blinked his one eye in surprise. "Just a few bits and pieces, my lord. Mainly what they didn't think was bloody worth taking with them. They will have to do. Hurin, I mean to dress you and a few more as local people, as many as we can manage, so you won't stand out. I want you to swing wide, north and south, until you cross the trail." More soldiers were coming in, and they all gathered around Ingtar and Hurin to listen. Rand leaned his hands on the mantel over the fireplace and stared into the flames. They made him think of Baalzamon's eyes. "There isn't much time," he said. "I feel..." Tobinda, something. Tobinda. pulling me to Falme, and there isn't much time." He saw Verin watching him and added harshly, "Not that. It's Fane I have to find. It has nothing to do with Tobinda. That," Verin nodded. "The wheel weaves as the wheel wills, and we are all woven into the pattern. Fane has been here weeks before us, perhaps months. A few more days will make little difference in whatever is going to happen. I'm going to get some sleep," he muttered, picking up his saddlebags. They can't have carried off all the beds. Upstairs he did find beds, but only a few still had mattresses, and those so lumpy he thought it might be more comfortable to sleep on the floor. Finally he chose a bed where the mattress simply sagged in the middle. There was nothing else in the room except one wooden chair and a table with a rickety leg. He took off his wet things, putting on a dry shirt and breeches before lying down, since there were no sheets or blankets, and propped his sword beside the head of the bed. Wryly, he thought that the only thing dry he had for a coverlet was the dragon's banner. He left it safely buckled inside the saddlebags. Rain drummed on the roof, and thunder growled overhead, and now and again a lightning flash lit the windows. Shivering, he rolled this way and that on the mattress, seeking some comfortable way to lie, wondering if the banner would not do for a blanket after all, wondering if he should ride on to Falme. He rolled to his other side, and Ba'alzamon was standing beside the chair with the pure white length of the dragon's banner in his hands. The room seemed darker there, as if Ba'alzamon stood on the edge of a cloud of oily black smoke. Nearly healed burns crisscrossed his face, and as Rand looked, his pitch-dark eyes vanished for an instant, replaced by endless caverns of fire. Rand's saddlebags lay by his feet, buckles undone, flap thrown back where the banner had been hidden. "The time comes closer, Luz Therin. 1,000 threads draw tight, and soon you will be tied and trapped, set to a course you cannot change. Madness, death. Before you die, will you once more kill everything you love?" Rand glanced at the door, but he made no move except to sit up on the side of the bed. What good to try running from the Dark One? His throat felt like sand. "I am not the dragon, father of lies," he said hoarsely. The darkness behind Ba'alzamon roiled, and furnaces roared as Ba'alzamon laughed. "You honor me, and belittle yourself. I know you too well. I have faced you 1,000 times. 1,000 times 1,000. I know you to your miserable soul, Luz Therin Kinslayer." He laughed again. Rand put a hand in front of his face against the heat of that fiery mouth. "What do you want? I will not serve you. I will not do anything that you want. I'll die first. You will die, worm. How many times have you died across the span of the ages, fool? And how much has death availed you? The grave is cold and lonely, save for the worms. The grave is mine. This time there will be no rebirth for you. This time the wheel of time will be broken and the world remade in the image of the shadow. This time your death will be forever. Which will you choose? Death everlasting, or life eternal and power?" Rand hardly realized that he was on his feet. The void had surrounded him, Satan was there, and the one power flowed into him. That fact almost cracked the emptiness. Was this real? Was it a dream? Could he channel in a dream? But the torrent rushing into him swept away his doubts. He hurled it at Ba'alzamon, hurled the pure one power, the force that turned the wheel of time, a force that could make seas burn and eat mountains. Ba'alzamon took half a step back, holding the banner clutched before him. Flames leaped in his wide eyes and mouth, and the darkness seemed to cloak him in shadow. In the shadow, the power sank into that black mist and vanished, soaked up like water on parched sand. Rand drew on Saidin, pulled for more, and still more. His flesh seemed so cold it must shatter at a touch. It burned, as if it must boil away. His bones felt on the point of crisping to cold crystal ash. He did not care. It was like drinking life itself. "Fool," Ba'alzamon roared. "You will destroy yourself, Matt." The thought floated somewhere beyond the consuming flood. The dagger, the horn, Fane, Emond's field. I can't die yet. He was not sure how he did it, but suddenly the power was gone, and Saidin and the void. Shuddering uncontrollably, he fell to his knees beside the bed, arms wrapped around himself in a vain effort to stop their twitching. "That is better, Luz Therin." Bardsamon tossed the banner to the floor and put his hands on the chair back. Wisps of smoke rose from between his fingers. The shadow no longer encompassed him. "There is your banner, Kinslayer. Much good will it do you. 1,000 strings, laid over 1,000 years, have drawn you here. 10,000, woven throughout the ages, tie you like a sheep for slaughter. The wheel itself holds you prisoner to your fate, age after age. But I can set you free. You cowering cur, I alone in the entire world can teach you how to wield the power. I alone can stop it killing you before you have a chance to go mad. I alone can stop the madness. You have served me before. Serve me again, lose Therin, or be destroyed forever. My name," Rand forced between chattering teeth, "is Rand al'Thor." His shivering forced him to squeeze his eyes shut, and when he opened them again, he was alone. But Bardsamon was gone. The shadow was gone. His saddlebag stood against the chair with the buckles done up, and one side bulging with the bulk of the dragon's banner, just as he had left it. But on the chair back, tendrils of smoke still rose from the charred impressions of fingers. Falme and Nynaeve pressed Elayne back into the narrow alleyway between a cloth merchant's shop and a potter's works as the pair of women linked by a silvery leash passed by, heading down the cobblestone street toward Falme Harbour. They did not dare allow that pair to come too close. The people in the street made way for those two even more quickly than they did for Seanchan soldiers or the occasional noble's palanquin, thickly curtained now that the days were cold. Even the street artists did not offer to draw them in chalks or pencils, although they pestered everyone else. Nynaeve's mouth tightened as her eyes followed the sul'dam and the damane through the crowd. Even after weeks in the town, the sight sickened her. Perhaps it sickened her more now. She could not imagine doing that to any woman, not even Moraine or Liandrin. Well, maybe Liandrin, she admitted sourly. Sometimes, at night, in the small, smelly room the two of them had rented above a fishmonger, she thought of what she would like to do to Liandrin when she got her hands on her. Liandrin, even more than Suroth. More than once, she had been shocked at her own cruelty, even while she was delighted at her inventiveness. Still trying to keep the pair in sight, her eyes fell on a bony man well down the street before the shifting throng hid him again. She had only a flash of a big nose and a narrow face. He wore a rich bronze velvet robe of Seanchan cut over his clothes, but she thought that he was no Seanchan, though the servant following him was, and a servant of high degree with one temple shaved. The local people had not taken to Seanchan fashions, particularly that one. That looked like Padan Fain, she thought incredulously. It couldn't be. Not here. Nynaeve, Elayne said softly. Could we move on now? That fellow selling apples is looking at his table as if he's thinking he had more a few moments ago, and I would not want him wondering what I have in my pockets. They both wore long coats made of sheepskin, with the fleece turned in and bright red spirals embroidered across the breast. It was country garb, but it passed well enough in Falme, where many people had come in from the farms and villages. Among so many strangers, the two of them had been able to sink in unnoticed. Nynaeve had combed out her braid, and her gold ring, the serpent eating its own tail, now nestled under her dress beside Lan's heavy ring on the leather cord around her neck. The large pockets of Elayne's coat bulged suspiciously. "You stole those apples?" Nynaeve hissed quietly, pulling Elayne out into the crowded street. "Elayne, we don't have to steal. Not yet, anyway." "No? How much money do we have left?" "You've been not hungry very often at mealtimes the last few days." "Well, I am not hungry," Nynaeve snapped, trying to ignore the hollow in her middle. Everything cost considerably more than she had expected. She had heard local people complaining about how prices had risen since the Seanchan came. "Give me one of those." The apple Elayne dug out of her pocket was small and hard, but it crunched with a delicious sweetness when Nynaeve bit into it. She licked the juice from her lips. "How did you manage to?" She jerked Elayne to a halt and peered into her face. "Did you... to winda, did you... to winda." She could not think of a way to say it with so many streaming by, but Elayne understood. "Only a little. I made that stack of old melons with the soft spots fall, and when he started putting them back, to winda. She did not even have the grace, as Nynaeve saw it, to blush or look embarrassed. Unconcernedly eating one of the apples, she shrugged. "There is no need to frown at me like that." I looked carefully to make sure there was no damane close. She sniffed. If I were being held prisoner, I would not help my captors find other women to enslave. Although, the way these Falmen behave, you would think they were lifelong servants of those who should be their enemies to the death. She looked around, openly contemptuous, at the people hurrying by. It was possible to follow the path of any Seanchan, even common soldiers, and even at a distance by the ripples of bowing. They should resist. They should fight back. How? Against two? Tobinda. That. They had to step to the side of the street, along with everyone else, as a Seanchan patrol neared, climbing from the direction of the harbour. Nynaeve managed the bow, hands on knees, with face schooled to a perfect smoothness. Elayne was slower, and made her bow with a distasteful twist of her mouth. There were 20 armoured men and women in the patrol, riding horses, for which Nynaeve was grateful. She could not become used to seeing people riding things that looked like bronze-scaled, tailless cats, and a rider on one of the flying beasts was always enough to make her feel dizzy. She was glad there were so few of them. Still, 2 leashed creatures trotted along with the patrol, like wingless birds with coarse leather skin and sharp beaks higher above the cobblestones than the helmeted heads of the soldier. Their long, sinewy legs looked as if they could run faster than any horse. She straightened slowly after the Seanchan were gone. Some of those who had bowed for the patrol came close to running. No one was comfortable at the sight of the Seanchan's beasts except the Seanchan themselves. "Elayne," she said softly as they resumed their climb, "if we are caught, I swear that before they kill us, or do whatever they do, I will beg them on bended knees to let me stripe you from top to bottom with the stoutest switch I can find. If you still can't learn to be careful, maybe it's time to think about sending you back to Tar Valon, or home to Camelin, or anywhere but here. I am careful. At least I looked to be sure there was no damane close by. What about you? I have seen you channel with one in plain sight." "I made sure they weren't looking at me," Nynaeve muttered. She had had to ball up all her anger at women being chained like animals to manage it. "And I only did it once, and it was only a trickle." "A trickle?" "We had to spend 3 days hiding in our room breathing fish while they searched the town for whoever had done it. Do you call that being careful? I had to know if there was a way to unfasten those collars. She thought there was. She would have to test one more collar at least before she was certain, and she was not looking forward to it. She had thought, like Elayne, that the damane must all be prisoners eager to escape, but it had been the woman in the collar who raised the pry. A man pushing a barrow that bumped over the cobblestones passed by them, crying his services to sharpen scissors and knives. "They should resist, somehow," Elayne growled. "They act as if they do not see anything that happens around them if there's a Seanchan in it." Nynaeve only sighed. It did not help that she thought Elayne was at least partly right. At first she had thought some of the Falmen submission at least must be a pose, but she had found no evidence of any resistance at all. She had looked at first, hoping to find help in freeing Egwene and Min, but everyone took fright at the merest hint that they might oppose the Seanchan, and she stopped asking before she drew the wrong sort of attention. In truth, she could not imagine how the people could fight. Monsters and Aes Sedai. How can you fight monsters and Aes Sedai? Ahead stood 5 tall stone houses, among the largest in the town, all together making up a block. 1 street short of them, Nynaeve found an alleyway beside a tailor shop, where they could keep an eye on some of the tall houses' entrances at least. It was not possible to see every door at once. She did not want to risk letting Elayne go off on her own to watch more, but it was not wise to go any closer. Above the rooftops, on the next street, the golden hawk banner of the High Lord Turak flapped in the wind. Only women went in or out of those houses, and most of those were sul'dam, alone or with damane in tow. The buildings had been taken over by the Seanchan to house the damane. Egwene had to be in there. Unlikely Min, they had found no sign of Min so far, though it was possible she was as hidden by the crowds as they. Nynaeve had heard many tales of women and girls being seized on the streets or brought in from the villages. They all went into those houses, and if they were seen again, they wore a collar. Settling herself on a crate beside Elayne, she dug into the other woman's coat for a handful of the small apples. There were fewer local folk in the streets here. Everyone knew what the houses were, and everyone avoided them, just as they avoided the stables where the Seanchan kept their beasts. It was not difficult to keep an eye on the doors through spaces between the passers-by. Just 2 women stopping for a bite. Just 2 more people who could not afford to eat at an inn. nothing to attract more than a passing glance. Eating mechanically, Nynaeve tried once more to plan. Being able to open the collar if she really could did no good at all unless she could reach Egwene. The apples did not taste so sweet anymore. From the narrow window of her tiny room under the eaves, one of a number roughly walled together from whatever had been there before, Egwene could see the garden where damane were being walked by their sul'dam. It had been several gardens before the Seanchan knocked down the walls that separated them and took the big houses to keep their damane. The trees were all but leafless, but the damane were still taken out for air whether they wanted it or not. Egwene watched the garden because Renna was down there talking with another sul'dam, and as long as she could see Renna, then Renna was not going to enter and surprise her. Some other sul'dam might come. There were many more sul'dam than damane, and every sul'dam wanted her turn wearing a bracelet. They called it being complete. But Renna still had charge of her training, and it was Renna who wore her bracelet 4 times out of 5. If anyone came, they would find no impediment to entering. There were no locks on the doors of damane's rooms. Egwene's room held only a hard, narrow bed, a washstand with a chipped pitcher and bowl, 1 chair and a small table, but it had no room for more. Damane had no need of comfort or privacy or possessions. Damane were possessions. Min had a room just like this in another house, but Min could come and go as she would, or almost as she would. Seanchan were great ones for rules. They had more for everyone than the White Tower did for novices. Egwene stood far back from the window. She did not want any of the women below to look up and see the glow that she knew surrounded her as she channeled the one power, probing delicately at the collar around her neck, searching futilely. She could not even tell whether the band was woven or made of links. Sometimes it seemed one, sometimes the other, but it seemed all of a piece all the time. It was only a tiny trickle of the power, the merest drip that she could imagine, but it still beaded sweat on her face and made her stomach clench. That was one of the properties of the sul'dam. If a damane tried to channel without a sul'dam wearing her bracelet, she felt sick, and the more of the power she channeled, the sicker she became. Lighting a candle beyond the reach of her arm would have made Egwene vomit. Once Renna had ordered her to juggle her tiny balls of light with the bracelet lying on the table. Remembering still made her shudder. Now, the silver leash snaked across the bare floor and up the unpainted wooden wall to where the bracelet hung on a peg. The sight of it hanging there made her jaws clench with fury. A dog leashed so carelessly could have run away. If a damane moved her bracelet as much as a foot from where it had last been touched by a sul'dam, Renna had made her do that too, had made her carry her own bracelet across the room. Or try to. She was sure it had only been minutes before the sul'dam snapped the bracelet firmly on her own wrist. But to Egwene, the screaming and the cramps that had had her writhing on the floor had seemed to go on for hours. Someone tapped at the door, and Egwene jumped, before she realized it could not be a sul'dam. None of them would knock first. She let Cedar go anyway. She was beginning to feel decidedly ill. "Min, here I am for my weekly visit," Min announced as she slipped inside and shut the door. Her cheeriness sounded a little forced, but she always did what she could to keep Egwene's spirits up. "How do you like it?" She spun in a little circle, showing off her dark green wool dress of Seanchan cut. A heavy, matching cloak hung over her arm. There was even a green ribbon catching up her dark hair, though her hair was hardly long enough for it. Her knife was still in its sheath at her waist, though. Egwene had been surprised when Min first showed up wearing it, but it seemed the Seanchan trusted everyone. Until they broke a rule. "It's pretty," Egwene said cautiously. "But why? I haven't gone over to the enemy, if that is what you were thinking. It was this, or else find some place to stay out in the town and maybe not be able to visit you again." She started to straddle the chair, as she would have in breeches, gave a wry shake of her head, and turned it around to sit. "Everyone has a place in the pattern," she mimicked, "and the place of everyone must be readily apparent. That old hag Elayne apparently got tired of not knowing what my place was on site and decided I ranked with the serving girls. She gave me the choice. You should see some of the things Seanchan serving girls wear, the ones who serve the lords. It might be fun, but not unless I was betrothed or, better yet, married. Well, there's no going back. Not yet, anyway. Elayne burned my coat and breeches." Grimacing to show what she thought of that, she picked up a rock from a small pile on the table and bounced it from hand to hand. "It isn't so bad," she said with a laugh, "except that it has been so long since I wore skirts that I keep tripping over them." Egwene had had to watch her clothes being burned too, including that lovely green silk. It had made her glad she had not brought more of the clothes the Lady Amalisa had given her, though she might never see any of them or the White Tower again. What she had on now was the same dark grey all damane wore. Damane have no possessions, it had been explained to her. The dress that damane wears, the food she eats, the bed she sleeps in, are all gifts from her sul'dam. If a sul'dam chooses that a damane sleep on the floor instead of in a bed, or in a stall in a stable, it is purely the choice of the sul'dam. Mulen, who had charge of the damane quarters, had a droning nasal voice, but she was sharp with any damane who did not remember every word of her boring lectures. "I don't think there will be any going back for me ever," Egwene said, sighing, sinking down on her bed. She gestured to the rocks on the table. "Renna gave me a test yesterday. I picked out the piece of iron ore and the copper ore blindfolded every time she mixed them up. She left them all here to remind me of my success. She seemed to think it was some kind of reward to be reminded. It doesn't seem any worse than the rest, not nearly as bad as making things explode like fireworks. But couldn't you have lied? Told her you didn't know which was which. You still do not know what this is like." Egwene tugged at the collar. Pulling did no more good than channeling had. "When Renna is wearing that bracelet, she knows what I am doing with the power and what I am not. Sometimes she even seems to know when she isn't wearing it," she says. "Sul'dam develop, an affinity," she calls it, after a while. She sighed. "No one even thought to test me on this earlier. Earth is one of the 5 powers that was strongest in men. When I picked out those rocks, she took me outside the town, and I was able to point right to an abandoned iron mine. It was all overgrown, and there wasn't any opening to be seen at all, but once I knew how, I could feel the iron ore still in the ground. There hasn't been enough to make it worth working in 100 years, but I knew it was there. I couldn't lie to her, Min. She knew I had sensed the mine as soon as I did. She was so excited she promised me a pudding with my supper. She felt her cheeks growing hot in anger and embarrassment. Apparently, she said bitterly, I am now too valuable to be wasted making things explode. Any damane can do that, only a handful can find ores in the ground. Light. I hate making things explode, but I wish that was all I could do. The color in her cheeks deepened. She did hate it, making trees tear themselves to splinters and the earth erupt. That was meant for battle, for killing, and she wanted no part of it. Yet anything the Seanchan let her do was another chance to touch saidar, to feel the power flowing through her. She hated the things Renna and the other sul'dam made her do, but she was sure that she could handle much more of the power now than she could before leaving Tar Valon. She certainly knew she could do things with it that no sister in the tower had ever thought of doing. They never thought of tearing the earth apart to kill men. Perhaps you won't have to worry about any of it much longer, Min said, grinning. I've found us a ship, Egwene. The captain has been held here by the Seanchan, and he is about ready to sail with or without permission. If he will take you, Min, go with him, Egwene said wearily. I told you I'm valuable now. Renna says in a few days they're sending a ship back to Seanchan. Just to take me. Min's grin vanished, and they stared at each other. Suddenly, Min hurled her rock at the pile on the table, scattering them. There has to be a way out of here. There has to be a way to take that bloody thing off your neck. Egwene leaned her head back against the wall. You know the Seanchan have collected every woman they've been able to find who can channel even a speck. They come from all over, not just from here in Falme, but from the fishing villages and from farming towns inland. Tarrabona and damane women, passengers off ships they've stopped. There are 2 Aes Sedai among them. Aes Sedai! Min exclaimed. By habit she looked around to make sure no Seanchan had overheard her saying that name. Egwene, if there are Aes Sedai here, they can help us. Let me talk to them, and they can't even help themselves, Min. I only talked to one. Her name is Reimer. The sul'dam don't call her that, but that's her name. She wanted to make sure I knew it, and she told me there is another. She told me in between bouts of tears. She's Aes Sedai, and she was crying, Min. She has a collar on her neck. They make her answer to Pura, and she can't do anything more about it than I can. They captured her when Falme fell. She was crying because she's beginning to stop fighting against it, because she cannot take being punished anymore. She was crying because she wants to take her own life, and she cannot even do that without permission. Light, I know how she feels. Min shifted uneasily, smoothing her dress with suddenly nervous hands. Egwene, you don't want to. Tobinda, Tobinda, Tobinda. Egwene, you must not think of harming yourself. I will get you out somehow. I will. I am not going to kill myself, Egwene said dryly. Even if I could, let me have your knife. Come on. I won't hurt myself. Just hand it to me. Min hesitated before slowly taking her knife from its sheath at her waist. She held it out warily, obviously ready to leap if Egwene tried anything. Egwene took a deep breath and reached for the hilt. A soft quiver ran through the muscles of her arm. As her hand came within a foot of the knife, a cramp suddenly contorted her fingers. Eyes fixed, she tried to force her hand closer. The cramp seized her whole arm, knotting muscles to her shoulder. With a groan, she sank back, rubbing her arm and concentrating her thoughts on not touching the knife. Slowly, the pain began to lessen. Min stared at her incredulously. What? Tobinda, Tobinda. I don't understand. Damane are not allowed to touch a weapon of any kind. She worked her arm, feeling the tightness go. Even our meat is cut for us. I don't want to hurt myself, but I could not if I did want to. No damane is ever left alone where she might jump from a height. That window is nailed shut or throw herself in a river. Well, that's a good thing. I mean, Tobinda, Tobinda, Tobinda. Oh, I don't know what I mean. If you could jump in a river, you might escape. Egwene went on dully, as if the other woman had not spoken. They are training me, Min. The sul'dam and the audam are training me. I cannot touch anything I even think of as a weapon. A few weeks ago I considered hitting Renna over the head with that pitcher, and I could not pour wash water for 3 days. Once I'd thought of it that way, I not only had to stop thinking about hitting her with it, I had to convince myself I would never, under any circumstances, hit her with it before I could touch it again. She knew what had happened, told me what I had to do, and would not let me wash anywhere except with that pitcher and bowl. You are lucky it happened between your visiting days. Renna made sure I spent those days sweating from the time I woke to the time I fell asleep, exhausted. I am trying to fight them, but they are training me as surely as they're training Pura. She clapped a hand to her mouth, moaning through her teeth. Her name is Ryma. I have to remember her name, not the name they put on her. She is Ryma, and she's Yellow Ajar, and she has fought them as long and as hard as she could. It is no fault of hers that she hasn't the strength left to fight any longer. I wish I knew who the other sister is that Ryma mentioned. I wish I knew her name. Remember both of us, Min. Ryma of the Yellow Ajar and Egwene Olvere, not Egwene the damane, Egwene Olvere of Emon's Field. Will you do that? Stop it, Min snapped. You stop it right this instant. If you get shipped off to Seanchan, I'll be right there with you. But I don't think you will. You know I've read you, Egwene. I don't understand most of it, I almost never do, but I see things I am sure link you to Rand and Perrin and Matt and, yes, even Galad the Light help you for a fool. How can any of that happen if the Seanchan take you off across the ocean? Maybe they're going to conquer the whole world, Min. If they conquer the world, there's no reason Rand and Galad and the rest could not end up in Seanchan. You ninny-headed goose. I am being practical, Egwene said sharply. I don't intend to stop fighting, not as long as I can breathe, but I don't see any hope that I'll ever have the sul'dam off me either. Just as I don't see any hope that anyone is going to stop the Seanchan. Min, if this ship captain will take you, go with him. At least then one of us will be free. The door swung open and Renna stepped in. Egwene jumped to her feet and bowed sharply, as did Min. The tiny room was crowded for bowing, but Seanchan insisted on protocol before comfort. Your visiting day, is it? Renna said. I had forgotten. Well, there is training to be done, even on visiting days. Egwene watched sharply as the sul'dam took down the bracelet, opened it, and fastened it again around her wrist. She could not see how it was done. If she could have probed with the one power, she would have, but Renna would have known that immediately. As the bracelet closed around Renna's wrist, a look came onto the sul'dam's face that made Egwene's heart sink. You have been channeling. Renna's voice was deceptively mild. There was a spark of anger in her eyes. You know that is forbidden except when we are complete. Egwene wet her lips. Perhaps I have been too lenient with you. Perhaps you believe that because you are valuable now, you will be allowed license. I think I made a mistake, letting you keep your old name. I had a kitten called Tully when I was a child. From now on, your name is Tully. You will go now, Min. Your visiting day with Tully is ended." Min hesitated only long enough for one anguished look at Egwene before leaving. Nothing Min could say or do would do anything except make matters worse, but Egwene could not help looking longingly at the door as it closed behind her friend. Renna took the chair, frowning at Egwene. "I must punish you severely for this. We will both be called to the Court of the Nine Moons, you for what you can do, I as your sul'dam and trainer, and I will not allow you to disgrace me in the eyes of the Empress. I will stop when you tell me how much you love being damane, and how obedient you will be after this. And, Tully, make me believe every word."